How in the world did you meet Wayne Dyer?
Well, I had gone to Maui. I was attending a conference with Ram Dass that he does Opening the Heart in Paradise seminar once a year. He did anyway. And I'm walking on Kanapali on the pathway. And all of a sudden I see Wayne Dyer about 100 yards ahead of me. Now I had met him 17 years prior to meeting him the second time. And so I knew who he was. I read all his books. I could verbatim repeat back the whole enchilada, he would say. Get my books and my tapes. I bought them all. He was a mentor for me. And I yelled out, Wayne! And he drops the phone. He was on the phone. He was always on the phone, by the way. He was being called from people all over the world constantly. The bottom line is, thank God he dropped the phone because he was forced then to encounter me. And then I reminded him how I had met him before and why I had met him. And we had this love fest. I was repeating back to him his books and his quotes. So he knew that I was definitely steeped in his philosophy. The first time I met him 17 years prior, we took a picture together. He puts his arm around me. He was taller than me. And he looks down at me. He had the most beautiful blue eyes. I have blue eyes. And he says, Kenny, you and I, we got one heart. And I felt it and he felt it. I knew we were connected in some way beyond this physical lifetime. So I reminded him, blah, 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 blah. We say goodbye. Half hour later, he comes running down the path. He was a runner. And he says, Kenny, you're a chiropractor. I know that. And I need your help. Would you come and take care of me? God, he used these words. God told me you're going to help me. And that's how I became his chiropractor. It was a special moment.
Great title for a podcast, Blessings.
Thank you. Yes, I love it.
What a great meditation.
We are here to learn in the sphere of life.
I'm all about believe. You're about spreading blessings. It's great.
What about your blessings? What's the biggest blessing of life?
What a great question.
Because it's the Blessings podcast, I have to ask you, what is your biggest lesson in life?
My biggest lesson in life.
A whole lot of conversations with people about life and how those things manifest as blessings and lessons, and sometimes both.
It's my connection.
You're going to get schooled.
The journey is the journey.
What you and me are searching for are the blessings in this life.
Remember the reality of how sweet people are.
Spread blessings around the world.
You are the most remarkable energy. You make me pause, make me excited, make me think, and make me spontaneously come up with an answer. This is another one of those great moments in time in my life. Thank you for reaching out to ask if I would do the show.
Welcome back to the Blessings podcast, my friends. Have you ever experienced a synchronicity? A meaningful coincidence that doesn't seem to be due to only chance? My guest today might say that we have more synchronicities in our lives than we realize. Dr. Kenneth Harris is a chiropractor, educator, author, speaker, and transformational teacher. A pioneer of holistic healing, Dr. Harris established his practice in 1974 and has devoted a lifetime to the exploration, understanding, and promotion of the mind-body-spirit connection. Dr. Harris is an honors graduate, magna cum laude, valedictorian, and former professor of the New York Chiropractic College. He holds a BA in psychology and MS in education, and synchronicities have led him to meet some amazing people like Wayne Dyer, Ram Dass, Deepak Chopra, and John Denver, and many others. So let's find out how we can access synchronicity to live our best lives. Welcome, Dr. Ken Harris, to the show.
Thank you for having me, Mitzi. I've been looking forward to this since our first conversation.
So what is synchronicity? Put it in a nutshell for us.
I'm going to give you the AI, everybody's living with AI today, definition of synchronicity, and then I'll elaborate. So according to AI, synchronicity refers to meaningful coincidences that seem to occur beyond chance, often interpreted as signs from the universe or higher power guiding you on a spiritual path by highlighting connections between your inner world and your external reality, signifying a deeper meaning of alignment with your purpose. Essentially, it is the way the universe communicates with you through seemingly random events. I'm going to say there are no random events. We'll take exception with the AI definition. They're not random. We are not walking on this planet by ourselves.
That's interesting because I just experienced a synchronicity. Because my second question for you, which you seem to have read my mind, was, does anything occur by chance?
I subscribe, not really. There may be occasionally a coincidence with no meaning behind it, but if you look deep and you connect the dots, you'll find meaning in most of your random coincidences. I'll use a term, the higher power, the organizing intelligence, God, if you will, didn't roll the dice when the universe was created. We are walking in a design, a matrix, an energy field, and we meet each other at the right time, at the right place, hopefully for the right reason. Sometimes what to do next, and sometimes what you shouldn't be doing next.
So true. And I love what you just said, that we're walking in an energy field. That is such a great way to think of it, because we know there's energy floating around that we can't see. We access our Wi-Fi, we tune into radio signals, but we're actually living in that. If you close your eyes and picture, there are waves happening that you can't see all around us. Isn't that
Yes,
interesting?
absolutely. And they say it's wave and particle, back and forth, wave and particle. We're recreating ourselves every second, actually, because we are energy fields. It looks like we're physical beings, we're matter, but really behind the matter is the energy field. You can't have matter without energy.
Oh, it gets really deep really quickly. When you start thinking about it, it sure does. Now, in your book, you have written this amazing book, Synchronicity, which I've really enjoyed. And you talk about something called a super synchronicity. So, what's the difference between a regular synchronicity and super synchronicity?
Good question. So occasionally you'll have one synchronicity happen isolated, but some days when you're really in a flow consciousness, you'll have one after the other. You'll meet one person who then the next person introduces you to somebody else, and vice versa. You just go, it's almost like a chain reaction. You can't believe it. You say, oh my God, it's one of those wild moments. And I've had many of them in my life. I'm open to them. I'm open, always looking for them. And my heart is wide open to attract them. By the way, you can attract them consciously. They're not just haphazard.
Okay, how do you do that?
My attitude is every person I meet is a friend of mine. I just haven't met them till that moment. And I treat them that way as an aspect of myself in another body. My belief system is that there's really only one major spirit differentiated in 8 billion souls. So when I meet you, I feel like I'm meeting myself. Now, you and I had a conversation in the car, and we had this inner knowing, at least I did. I'll speak for my side of the pancake.
Yeah.
I know this lady already. And we really we went down a rabbit hole within 30 seconds. It was amazing.
I know.
Because I felt like I had already met you.
I know. I can tell that we're speaking the same language. I can tell that we're already, I think when I talked to you, even the first time, there was a lot I didn't even have to say. We were already speaking without saying any words, which is really cool. And I think you meet people like this along the way. I can tell you about a handful of times when I've met someone who I really thought was an angel, like just coming down to nudge me and say, hey, I'm here. I can tell you a quick story. I remember one time I walked out of Staples, the store, and there was an older lady wandering around, and she was very beautifully dressed. Her hair was perfect, and she just was wandering. She seemed to be lost. And I asked her if she was okay, and she said she couldn't find her car. So she described her car to me. She said it was a tan Mercedes. And there were not many people where I lived who would be driving a Mercedes. It was not a very affluent town. So I thought, all right, this will be easy. We can find her car, no problem. So we were walking around, and I walked with her and talked with her for a good 10 minutes before we actually found the car. And I just deposited her at her car, made sure she was okay, and she was fine. She just couldn't find her car. It happens to all of us, right? And we went our separate ways. But I just had a weird, special feeling about that encounter. And there have been many such encounters in my life where I've had to help. It's always when I have to help someone. And it's almost like a little test from the universe. Do you think the universe gives us little tests like that?
Without a doubt. I don't think I know. I know that we're being guided. We're not walking on this planet by ourselves. We have angels, ancestors, everybody in your DNA is with you right now. Your whole family history is with you.
I agree.
That's my belief.
Yeah, I agree. And it's very interesting to think about what we're here to do and maybe what our job is. What are the things we're meant to heal and what are the contributions we're meant to make to society? And I believe that those are passed through your family. And maybe there's an ancestor, maybe it's a parent or a grandparent who hasn't been able to resolve something. And so now it's your turn to try to resolve that. Do you feel like the resolution of generational trauma is something that we can recognize and be purposeful about stopping that chain?
Everyone in your history is with you and they're cheering us on. If we have that victory, we free them. That's how I believe that's how it works.
Yeah. So we can actually heal. Our mutual friend Neil Bakshi says when you heal yourself, you can heal 7 generations behind you and 7 generations in front of you.
So the indigenous peoples tell us, it's through. They came up with the number 7, which is a spiritual number in and of itself. 7 cervical vertebrae, 7 days of the week, 7 chakras, blah, blah, blah. So I'm not sure how they came to that conclusion, but I believe what you just said is true. Yes, I concur.
Yeah, I think it's so fascinating. And when you have these synchronicities, these things that line up and seem to not be just coincidence, these hidden meanings, it feels to me like these are up to us as individuals to interpret, a little bit like the way we interpret our dreams. So I get to say what that encounter with that woman in the parking lot meant for me. Is that how it works?
Yes. Yeah. I always tell people, don't ask me to interpret your synchronicities for you. You have to connect the dots. It's an individual explanation that makes sense to you. So when I say magic, mystery, meaning, the meaning comes from the person having the experience. It doesn't come externally from another person to tell you what that meant. Only you can figure that out. No one has your history.
Yeah. And I think that when we ask ourselves that question, what did that mean? We always get an answer.
Yes.
And you just have to listen to your intuition.
Absolutely. The intuition lives in your microbiome, in your gut. And I always use the acronym, pay attention to your gut feelings, because the word gut means God uttering truth, as opposed to ego, which is edging God out. The mind can talk you, Mitzi, in and out of anything, but your gut will never lie to you. Your body will always tell you what's really going on. I use kinesiology in my practice, and I would ask them a question. They'd say one thing, but when I tested them, the body said, nay, it's not true. So pay attention to GUT.
You're killing me because honestly, when you were talking, my first question in my mind was, do you believe in muscle testing? And then you said it. You are reading my mind. But I do muscle testing on myself sometimes to just happen to maybe confirm my intuition. And I saw an interesting video with a girl who was doing some muscle testing, and just for the audience, we'll explain what that is. But she was using the technique of letting herself either move forward or backward in response to, she was trying to make choices about something to buy. And she took an object that she was thinking about buying and she held it to her heart, right, and she let herself fall. And if she fell towards the front, it would be a yes. And if she fell backwards, it would be a no. I've done it I've put my thumbs together in a loop and I've pulled on them. So Absolutely. Tell me about muscle testing. That's how I use it.
Yeah, they're fine. Whatever works for you. I always tell people when they're in a state of indecision to close your eyes, think of a positive response, and then think of a negative response to that question. And if your energy field expands, that's a yes. If it contracts, that's a no. Now, not everybody feels it in the same place in their body. Some will feel it in their throat, some will feel it in their heart, some will feel it in their gut. But each person will have a place in their body where they'll have an expansion or contraction, and that's a yes and a no. It's very simple,
sensation.
But people don't trust it.
Yeah, that's fascinating. So you're saying you don't even need to have a specific action that you do. You can actually just ask and then listen for a feeling in your body, a physical feeling.
Absolutely. Tune in. Not everybody is that connected to their field, so they don't always have that. So we would use an arm fossa test. We would test for the person to see it. They can't believe it when I would check it and then it collapses. They go, oh my God. But I said, yes, yeah, but your body just said no. And then we would reverse it. It's funny you said, I'm reading your mind. I've got news for you. There's only one mind. And we're all connected to that one mind. And we just had a synchronicity because twice now you said, I was about to ask you that, Dr. Ken.
Yep. You just hit it right. What you just said is mind blowing. There is only one mind.
You know what I think of it, Mitzi? I think of as a computer station. Yeah. All right. There's a mainframe somewhere in the cosmos. We're all just substations within the mainframe. Now, you need to have the code to get into that mainframe. That's the key. If you can find the code, you'll access the Akashic Records. You've heard of this thing called the Akashic Records. That's how people do it. So I would say have an openness of heart, have compassion, have love. You asked before, what's the purpose of why are we here? What are we doing on this planet? I'm going to sum it up very simply. In my opinion, the prime mission is to give and receive love. That's why we came. All the other stuff is Mickey Mouse, drama, but it's learning how to give and receive love. And I think that's the big idea. That's my big idea. All the stuff we go through is really testing us. Can we show up in love? And I don't mean romantic love, unconditional love. Right. When I met Ram Dass, we didn't even have to speak. You said we can communicate without speaking. Just by looking at each other, we telepathically communicated. It blew me away. I was in the presence of a highly evolved soul. We just looked at each other and we finished the sentences for each other. It was amazing.
That is amazing. Yes. You tell that story of when you met Ram Dass in your book, Synchronicity. It's a very interesting story. And was he able to understand why you were there without speaking?
The funny thing is, I had no clue as to what, I was never a guru follow-up. Trust me on this one. I ran from the gurus, but I know who he was. And I had been taking care of Wayne Dyer, and I was on Maui, and someone called me and said, why don't you go see Ram Dass? I said, what for? Anyway, the guy had his personal number. I said, oh, I'll go over on the other side of the island. Why not? And that all worked out through synchronicity, because when I first called, there was no one there. The airline flight got canceled, and the next call was from his secretary, come. So I laughed. I said, okay, I guess I'm supposed to see him today. When I went into the room, there was a stillness there that I had never felt before, a calmness. You could feel his energy was just totally still. And we looked at each other, and he said, what can I do for you today, Ken? And I looked at him and I said to myself, I don't know. I closed my eyes, and all of a sudden, a tremendous sense of grief came over me. I don't know where it came from, but I realized that we had a mutual friend who got killed in India on a motorbike. He episoded before they got him to the hospital. That guy's name was Sham Das, who was a close friend of Ram Dass, and he was my friend the last 4 years of his life. And I looked at him and I said, I want to know how Sham is. And he puts his head down. He goes to his third eye. He taps it like this. The third eye is the pituitary chakra. And he says to me, Sham Das with Krishna, meaning Christ, God, whatever the source, that's what he meant. And all of a sudden, there's an apparition in the room with the two of us, which also blew me away. And he was fine. So I went from feeling deep sadness to joy in the next moment when I realized that he is where he is, doing what he needs to be doing. So there was a relief. The grief just lifted from me. But I didn't know that's why I was going consciously. So much happens in the subconscious. That's the problem. We live in 10% of awareness. 90% is below the surface, like an iceberg. There's only 10% on top, but 90% is below the water. And so the things percolate up if you get still. The quieter you get, the more you're going to hear.
Yeah. So you have had these amazing experiences with some people in this world who are considered highly evolved beings, and you seem to just meet them. People who I would love to have met, and even people to meet in the future in my life. But like Wayne Dyer, you just mentioned, how in the world did you meet Wayne Dyer?
Well, I had gone to Maui. I was attending a conference with Ram Dass that he does Opening the Heart in Paradise seminar once a year. He did anyway. And I'm walking on Kanapali on the pathway. And all of a sudden, I see Wayne Dyer about 100 yards ahead of me. Now, I had met him 17 years prior to meeting him the second time. And so I knew who he was. I read all his books. I could verbatim repeat back the whole enchilada, he would say. Get my books and my tapes. I bought them all. He was a mentor for me. And I yelled out, Wayne. And he drops the phone. He was on the phone. He was always on the phone, by the way. He was being called from people all over the world constantly. The bottom line is, thank God he dropped the phone, because he was forced then to encounter me. And then I reminded him how I had met him before and why I had met him. And we had this love fest. I was repeating back to him his books and his quotes. So he knew that I was definitely steeped in his philosophy. The first time I met him 17 years prior, we took a picture together. He puts his arm around me. He was taller than me. And he looks down at me. He had the most beautiful blue eyes. I have blue eyes. And he says, Kenny, you and I, we got one heart. And I felt it and he felt it. I knew we were connected in some way beyond this physical lifetime. So I reminded him, blah, 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 blah. We say goodbye. Half hour later, he comes running down the path. He was a runner. And he says, Kenny, you're a chiropractor. I know that. And I need your help. Would you come and take care of me? God, he used these words. God told me you're going to help me. And that's how I became his chiropractor. It was a special moment. And not only did I adjust him, but I did energy work with him. And at one point, our fields literally merged. We became one. There was a unified experience between him and I. And on my website, his quote was, you took me to heaven. I didn't want to come back. I said, no, we both went to this heaven, whatever that heaven was, but we were in a unified field state where I didn't know where I ended, he began, or he began and I ended. Our fields literally merged. Now, his field, when I checked him out initially, millions of people were on his wire. He had awakened millions of people in the world, and they were all calling on him. It's amazing. He was a great spiritual teacher for me, and through him, I met Ram Dass in an intimate way, and so the rest is history. But here's what I feel. I was given this by grace. I met Deepak Chopra the same way. I wound up teaching his 7 spiritual laws of success. This is another funny story, Mitzi, because I was it was at the same conference I met Wayne Dyer. I was the appetizer. He was the main presenter. And I said to the man who owns the company, whose name was Larry, I said, Larry, I'm going to fly down from Northern California to Southern California, and I'm going to go see Deepak Chopra. I had this intuition that I was supposed to meet him. He looks at me and says, are you crazy? Do you have an appointment? Do you know if he's even here in the country? I said, no, I'm just going to go down and check him out. So I go into the hotel. I asked the girl, where's the Chopra Center? It was in La Jolla at the time. She says, oh, just go up to the corner, make a right turn, make another right turn, go down the hill. It's 2 blocks away. At which point I did that. And as soon as I turned around that corner, Deepak and I belly butted. Boom, like this. And I said, oh, Deepak, I've been looking for you. It's crazy. I know it sounds like he's making this up. No, I'm not making it up. And then he said, what can I do for you, Ken? And I said, I'm a field director of the Whole Health Institute. We want to invite you to come to the Mohonk Mountain House in New Paltz. We're doing a conference. We want you to present. And I show him the brochure, and he looked at it and he said, oh, I'm going to call my secretary. I want you to come tomorrow and spend some time with me and tell me more. At which point I had a 3-hour one-on-one with him. And it was just beautiful. Again, a resonance, a synchronicity meant to be. So I'm still waiting to meet Oprah, by the way, because
You said that in your book.
I
You
know.
will meet her. You will
They
meet
were
her.
all in my dream state. All 3 were supposed to meet me, but I haven't met Oprah, okay? But I did meet Gayle King hiking in the woods in New York State in the middle of nowhere. And I told her my story. She says, I'll tell Oprah. And then I met 6 months later, Stedman Graham, her boyfriend, in California. He sits right down next to me. And I look at him, I said, hey, Stedman, is Oprah with you? He says, why do you ask? And I tell him the story. He says, give me a card, I'll tell Oprah. So I'm on deck. I'm just waiting. I'm being patient.
I cannot wait for that moment. I'm going to be clapping for you so loudly when I see that happen. You have to text me right away. I'm with Oprah. Send me a picture.
Believe me, I'll text everybody. But I believe Oprah will interview me about the book Second Chances from Surviving to Thriving, because it's a book of hope and inspiration. It's right up her alley.
Yeah.
She would promote this book if she read it. Neil's in the book. He's the first chapter in the book. Neil is our mutual friend, who, by the way, got me to meet you. He
Yes.
knew, he said, oh, you and Mitzi, he told you, call this guy.
He did. And because I said to him, Neil, is there anyone that you think I should meet or talk to or connect with? And he said, he said, yes, you have to talk to Dr. Ken Harris.
Did he tell you how we met? Did he ever tell you how?
Yes. It was on the beach, wasn't it? It was his sister. You met his sister and her husband. How would you like to get the best text of your life? This is your sign that it's time to add something powerful to your morning routine that sets you up for success and reminds you that you are worthy and makes you unstoppable. It's a motivational text message from me, a real human. I am Mitzi Campbell, a mindset specialist, and I know that it is possible for you to live the life of your dreams. My morning motivational text messages help you up-level your mindset, your happiness, and your success. Sign up for a 2-week free trial at yourpositivemoment.com and change your life today. Join the movement so we can all thrive together. yourpositivemoment.com. Tell the story. I won't tell you tell the story.
So Judy and I, my wife of 56 years, my angel, my incarnated earth angel, we used to go to Nantucket every year. And every year we would go, we would always take a picture by the lighthouse, the Brand Point Lighthouse on the beach. That was one of our rituals. That day, there was no one else on the beach to take our pictures. So I walked down the end of the beach, and Neil's sister, who's a physician, and her husband, who's also a physician, were the only two people there. So I said, would you be so kind and take a photograph of us with the lighthouse behind us? And they said, oh, we'd be happy to do that. And then we engaged afterwards, and I looked down, and she's holding this book called The Autobiography of a Yogi. I said, are you followers of the Spiritual Frontiers Fellowship? She said, yes, we are. I said, every year when I visit my son in California, I go to the ashram there just to sit. It's in Encinitas, California, along the ocean. You don't have to do anything. Just sit there, you'll be healed. That's where he had one of his hermitages. So I said, I read the book, and I'm not a follower, but I do read. I read the book, and I'm very aware of the teachings. And one thing led to another. I told her there was a Sikh general that came to live with us. She says, we used to be Sikhs. I said, oh, really? That's what they were raised in the Hindu tradition. I told her that whole story. But the bottom line, I said, where do you live? They said, we live in New Jersey, or we're moving to New Jersey. I said, I live in New Jersey. There was another little coincidence there. One thing led to another. She says, I'm getting this feeling you need to meet my brother, Neil. I said, fine. I said, I'd be happy to meet him. What does he do? Well, he's in transition. He used to be he's on his way to become a managing director of Goldman Sachs. But my mother just recently passed. She's telling me, his mother and her mother, from a simple procedure, they went in for a thumb resection, and she went into a coma. And he's looking to change his life. He's not chasing the money anymore. He wants to have a more meaningful experience. So Neil came up the following week, and I shared an attunement with him, and then I mentored him for a couple of months, and the rest is history. He's passed me. He went on warp speed ahead.
He's so amazing. And many people that connected with me have listened to my episode with Neil, and you're making me think I need to do another show with Neil too. Because he's changed so much even since the last time I spoke to him. He is amazing. Yeah. And so I know that you're also amazing. And you just mentioned something really cool, the attunement process. So I know that you do this energy healing thing called attunement. Can you talk about that and explain to us what is it and what does it do?
The intention of an attunement it is an energy form of healing. It's non-touch. You don't touch the physical body. You work in the field, and it works through the endocrine system as opposed to the chakra system. So you can open or close the seals to the endocrine glands, which are very potent chemical modulators of the body. But the intention is to connect the person by opening these seals to themselves. Unlike, and I'm not disparaging, unlike Reiki, which directs energy, this is not directing energy. It's creating a connection between the soul of the person and the persona of that person. So they'll get the download of what they're supposed to do next. not I'm going to tell them what they're supposed to do next. Because here's the bottom line. We're all souls having temporary human experiences. The answers are in the field. All our answers we're seeking are within ourselves. People go to all kinds of other people to get answers, but I'm telling you, you don't really have to go to anybody else to get an answer. If you quiet the mind, because it's chatter all the time, the monkey mind, you will not be able to hear the voice of the soul. It whispers. And if you don't pay attention to those whispers, sometimes you're going to get hit with a 2x4. It'll shout. So the attunement helps people still their capacities of body, mind, and spirit so they can start to hear their soul information. So we're soul encrypted. Let me put it that way. So I can open the field because when you get emotionally upset, and this is where most people are in trouble, the physical part and the mental part are two parts, but the emotions are the worst. When people become emotionally disturbed, it's like throwing a rock into the water and you can't see the bottom. The ripples are so disturbing. So the attunement helps to quiet the person so they can start to hear what their soul's been trying to tell them.
That's so important. I think a lot of us, when we get to the point of life where something happens and we find ourselves with a health issue, for example, happens to many people, it isn't just one thing, unless it's an accident or like a trauma, an acute trauma. It's not just one thing that has caused that health issue to come about. And so the idea of quieting the soul so that you can then tune into healing is very attractive to me. And I think that's actually what happened to me. People who are listening to my show know that I got hit with kind of a health issue a few years ago where I woke up one morning with vertigo suddenly. And it turned into neurological issues. And it took me a long time. I'm now 3 years out from that. It took me a long time to get into the place where I felt like I was almost healed from that. And really what the universe was doing was telling me all the changes I need to make in my life and to do exactly what you just described, to quiet my soul.
It's not the soul, Mitzi. It's quiet, the self-active mind. The soul doesn't need quieting. The soul doesn't, but it's the busyness. It's the monkey mind.
And the emotions, like you just said, to quiet the emotions, to calm the emotions.
Thoughts and feelings are connected through the thoughts are electrical in nature and all feelings are magnetic. And that's how you create an electromagnetic field and you send that into the Wi-Fi. That's how you attract good or bad things to yourself. The major issues in all illness are thoughts, traumas, and toxins. Thoughts, traumas, and toxins. And the biggest problem is the thinking mind, which then disturbs the heart center. There's more information in the heart going to the brain than the brain to the heart. But most often, people they take tranquilizers. Why? They want to quiet their mind, their busyness.
Traumas,
thoughts, traumas,
toxins,
environmental toxins, trauma, accidents. But the thoughts are where it all starts. The wrong thing. We call it thinking. Limited beliefs, limited thinking.
Right. So if someone wants to undergo a total healing, which should they start first? Thoughts, traumas, or toxins?
I would say sometimes you need to address all three. You can do right thinking, but if you're being poisoned by the environment, you better clean up your diet. And if you've had an accident, sometimes you're going to need an external help. You break your arm, you need a doctor to say it'll heal without orthopedics, but it won't heal straight. As a chiropractor, I would help to realign the physical distortions in the spine, which we call subluxations. But they came about usually because of wrong thinking, wrong emotions, and toxins.
Yeah.
Those are the three major causes of all illness. So I think in most cases, you got to address all three. In many cases, for some people, it's their thinking. For some people, it's their diet. And for some people, they've been traumatized emotionally as well as physically.
Have you ever seen someone heal from just making one correction, or is it always multiple corrections?
I would say it's always multiple, but different percentages. For some people, they got a clean diet. They don't have to clean up their diet anymore, but they got to maybe change their thinking. And that's the hardest one. The attunement is, what are you listening to? Change your tone, change your tune. On a radio, there's a tuner, right? Sometimes you just got to tweak it a little bit, click, and the static goes away and you're on the channel. But a lot of people, most of us have static. And we got it from our mothers, fathers, teachers, and preachers. We were told stuff that wasn't true.
Yeah.
From 0 to 7. So many things were dumped in to the subconscious that just were never true. And so it takes a lifetime to unlearn that which you thought was true.
How do you know that you believe something that isn't true?
You get a gut feeling. Something, you ever just say, it just doesn't feel right. I know it sounds right, but it's not right. And when I feel my body, it doesn't feel right. I always tell women, don't pay attention to what the guy tells you. Pay attention to how you feel in his presence when you're on a date.
Yeah.
He can give you a great story here, but if you don't feel safe, find another guy. So you got to really go in and listen. It's a question of quiet and listen. Don't go by just what you're hearing. Because the self-active mind can talk you in and out of anything. It's just the way it is. So when I hear something and it doesn't feel right, I don't listen. I don't act on it.
A lot of self-development experts talk about the idea of going back into your life experiences and writing down your core beliefs and then asking yourself, is this belief serving me? Is it empowering me? Or is it holding me back? Is that a good technique for people to do?
That's a good question. What you just said is true. Yeah, absolutely, without a doubt. My mother always bought this product, but it's not the right product that I need this time. The advertisers know it. They know that you start buying what your parents told you. Unfortunately, most of the role models we had didn't know what they were doing. They weren't in tune. Let me put it that way. With their own self.
We're all just here on the planet for this life experience, not for the first time, but for the first time consciously.
As Ram Dass would say, this ain't your first rodeo.
No, but got to tune in to the information that you have stored in your soul, as opposed to what you are experiencing in your conscious, in your ego mind.
Yes, absolutely. There's always a disconnect.
Yeah.
It's not easy. It's not easy because we weren't taught that way.
A lot of people don't even bother to do it. We just grow up believing what we believe, and we never even question our beliefs. We never do that step of going in and saying, what do I believe? Where did that come from? Why do I believe that? And is it really true?
We're on autopilot.
We are. We're in default mode. And what's really interesting about that, I've been thinking about this lately. We touched on this a little bit in our private conversation when we first met, but the idea of quantum physics and how the quantum field, and there's been a lot more emerging research on that. And I was thinking that especially right now in the world, there's a lot of, I wouldn't even call it polarity. What I would call it is there are people who are in a totally different reality from other people. I will wake up in the morning and I'll see someone who believes something that I don't see or I don't believe. And they'll think that it's a really negative world. And I'll, just as an example, this is a really negative world. And I'll think, yeah, there are negative things that happen, but I think it's a really positive world. And then I'll do research on what they're saying and find out that it's not really true, but they believe it. And it's not only that they believe it, that's the world that they're living in. So their perception, and then it got me thinking about quantum mechanics and how in order for something to be, quote, real, it needs an observer. So what does that spark for you in your mind? What do you want to say when I talk about that?
We're all wearing different lenses of perception, is what you're saying. You'll say, we'll both look at the same object and we'll have two different experiences.
Yep.
If you want to have a good experiment, put an object in the center of a room, have 15 people sit around in a circle, give them all different colored glasses and tell them what they see. I see a red elephant. No, it's a green elephant. Blah, 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 blah. It's a fractal consciousness. We're all not perceiving in the same way. The only thing that separates all of us is our belief systems. That's the bottom line. Belief is the thing that stops you from connecting with me because everybody knows the world's flat, right? Everybody knows that. And Christopher said, no, the world is really round. And they told him, you're going to fall off at the other end. So we're living in a 3 and a 5D world simultaneously. We're walking on the same planet, but we're not having the same experience. I would say what you're getting over the waves today on TV is mostly not true. 99% of what they're telling us is not
Yeah.
true at all.
They call it programming for a reason.
Spellbound. We're being spellbound.
Spellbound. I
We all
stopped
have.
watching
We've
TV.
all.
I don't watch TV at all. I do now watch a little bit of a movie here and there or series like that. But I knew that was true, that the programming was real. And it was actually programming my perceptions and my mind and the way that I give meaning to things. And I had to stop watching television when I had my health issue because the TV would literally make me dizzy watching any screen. And I think that was the universe telling me, just stop, cut it off. And that was one of the toxins for me. What do you think about that? Like me,
You're absolutely true. 99% of the ads on TV are for what? Drugs.
hopefully
Disease.
they'll go away.
You better get checked for this. You better get checked for that. You better get. But it's ad infinitum. I'm glad you stopped watching it. It's probably the best fast you could ever have done. Everybody goes on a food fast, but go on a meat fast. Yeah, most of what they're telling us is not true at all. That's
right. So when you really realize it, like it's kind of like that Matrix. When you wake up and realize you're in the Matrix, it brings on a whole flood of experiences in the body. And for me, it does activate my emotions. And I have to try and temper that because I will start to feel like, wow, either a fear or I'll feel a deep compassion for people who don't realize this is what's actually happening. And they're so caught up in the weeds that they're always stressed. They're always upset. Then I'll get upset for them. So it's a whole cycle.
And the ripples go out and the ripples go out.
I know. That's why you do the thoughts. Talk about thoughts and the energy of thoughts.
Every thought has a biochemical component to it. Every time you think a certain thought, there's a chemistry that goes on in the brain. The apothecary is here. Mm-hmm. So negative thoughts will create negative hormones, and positive thoughts will create positive hormones. Yeah. So cortisol is the main stress hormone that we all have to deal with, and that'll just disequilibrate your whole system.
What's the benefit of an individual holding a positive thought? What's the benefit to humanity?
I believe that we're all connected. In the cover of my book, there's the picture of the universal symbol, the flower of life. We're all connected. And so we're speaking to each other all the time, unbeknownst to us. Like you said something in the beginning, when you meet someone, before you even say a word, your heart starts to entrain. Your heart starts to speak to each other and you get a certain vibe. Yep. Like I just heard your voice and I said, oh, this is one of my people. I knew right away we were in the same book and on the same page immediately. And I can tell that very quickly now because I have that perception when I meet someone. And I'm kind because if they're not willing to go down a rabbit hole, I just let them stay where they are. I'm not trying to change anybody's belief system. I stopped doing that. But I do enjoy, and I happen to attract people like you all the time now, because that's what I'm sending out into the field. Where's my other tribe members? Where's my community? Where are my people? And we find each other. And we don't know by how we look that we know each other, but we know when we're in the presence of each other, we feel peace, we feel love, we feel connection. Biggest problem today, I hate to say it, is loneliness. People are lonely, and COVID really exacerbated the whole separation. That was worse than the virus could have ever been, was the separation.
Yeah, it was. And I think for a lot of people who stayed in that mode of kind of that quote, working from home, or a lot of entrepreneurs are doing it solo, and we remained in that, and we crave these connections. And it's interesting you mentioned that, like finding your people, finding your tribe. Like, I think that for the pandemic, it was almost a way of helping us to separate from those who were not in our tribe. And maybe it just takes a little bit of time to put out the feelers, the energetic feelers, to attract the people that are in your tribe. And to also be open to the idea that, they're not going to be necessarily in your neighborhood, that they could be anywhere in the world.
Absolutely. Yeah. We are connected globally for sure. And it's so joyful though, when you meet a fellow tribe member.
Yeah.
Meeting you, I was happy when I got off the phone.
I was too. I was so happy. And you actually mentioned this. You say there's a word for these people, Mispuchas. Am I saying that correctly?
Mishpucha.
Oh,
It's a Jewish word.
I don't have the Jewish pronunciation. I'm sorry. And I was married to a Jewish man for 16 years. You'd think I would know, but no.
Yeah, it means the member of the tribe, member of your family. We're
member-
soul connected, Mitzi.
Yes, we are.
Not necessarily through DNA, but through spiritual encounters.
That's right.
And I always laugh because I say hello again. Here you are again. We have something to do together. Now, you and I are going to go out on the airwaves. People are going to be listening to this, and they're going to be calling you, say, I think I'm in your tribe.
Yep. I want you to call, for God's sake, call me. I need you. I need more tribe members. I'm always looking for my tribe members. I think that's beautiful. And you have a quote in your book. I wrote it down. Life is intelligent and can be trusted and has a way of connecting us at just the right time and place.
Pay attention.
Pay attention.
Pay attention. Stay aware, awake, and alert. Yes.
Yeah.
The signs and symbols are everywhere.
Yeah. And also tap into it, lean into it. So I have met my tribe members because I haven't been afraid that it's, quote, weird to just become friends with somebody quickly that you feel a connection with. And sometimes we'll be like, oh, they're going to think I'm weird if I say that I think there's a connection there. But no, they don't. If you say it, it's because they feel it too.
Yes.
Yeah, it's so cool. So I want to ask you a question. You talk a lot about the beach. You go to a lot of beaches. You say that you and your wife, Judy, are beach people. And I absolutely am very attracted to the beach and the ocean myself. And you also talk about the Mohonk Mountain House a lot. So you have this mountain and this beach, and these are beautiful, very extreme examples of nature and its power and connection and its energy. What is it about sacred places like that? Why are we drawn to places like that? And how can we use those places to help us to live and thrive in the best way possible?
Good question. So the ocean and the mountains are two places where the energy is very high. You walk along the beach and you're grounding, by the way, and the water, you're grounding all the negative ions out of your system.
Yep.
But according to Deepak Chopra, the first law is the field of pure potentiality. The only way you can access it is to be in nature. When you're in nature, you're accessing the field of all possibilities. It's an openness. And usually being at the beach, people are friendly. Everybody says, good morning, good day. And one thing leads to another. I've met so many people just walking along the beach with Judy. It's beyond coincidence. And 99% of them, not 100, but 99% of them are right there. They've been looking for me and I've been looking for them. I've made some great friendships just walking along the beach. And the same thing with the forest. You're out of your head. You're not in your own mind. You're connecting to the field of pure potentiality. And that's the value of nature. And that's the first law in the 7 laws of spiritual expression. You got to open the field. Nature is a great way, a great excuse to be engaging with that field.
That's right. If you're drawn to a place, you should go there. When I first got my driver's license, I was 16 years old. And the first thing I did was drive to the beach by myself. And it was like 2.5 hour drive. And I just had to go. It was before internet. So, I had to use a map. And I just, at 16, when I got there, I parked my car and I had no idea about parking. You had to pay for parking. I didn't know. I was 16 and I got a parking ticket. My dad got it in the mail. And he said, Mitzi, were you at the beach? Did you drive? Because I would just be gone all day. He had no idea where I was. And yes, I said, yeah, I did. I drove to the beach. I didn't know it. So I had to pay this parking ticket. It was so funny. But that was my first thing. I felt like when I got that freedom was, I'm going to the beach right away by myself.
My wife loves the beach more than I do. I love the mountains. So we compromise. We do both.
Yeah.
If you look at my screensaver,
Yep.
It's the ocean. And I love the ocean because the ocean is a great metaphor for you and I.
Yeah.
We're waves in the ocean. We've always been connected to the field. We're always part of the field. And when the wave washes up on the shoreline, it gets reabsorbed into the field again. So you're never disconnected from the field in that sense. We think we're individuated, but we're really not.
Right.
That's the ego mind. That the ego lives in separation. It loves to compare. It loves to compete. But We're all just part of the one. Let me put it that way. Whatever that one is to you, I call it the OI, the organizing intelligence. Some people
Oh,
call it
yeah.
God. I have no problem with that, except I don't like to get into holy wars of who's God, Buddha, Jesus, Muhammad. Then we're going to have a fight like we're having now in the world. But we're all connected to that one in
Yes.
some way, shape, or form. And
Yep.
the divine, that's another word I use. It's not as separating. The divine spark lives in you and me. We're rays of the sun. And when
We
we
are.
die, we just become reabsorbed back into the field. We lose our sense of individuality. We become part of the whole.
And I just wrote something about this morning, the idea that we're always changing. We think that when we grow up, we become attached to this one particular version of us, and we forget that we're always changing. We're always changing, always, from the time we're a baby up until the time we die, and then beyond that. So think about, even when your physical body is no longer alive, it's still changing. And you're
Right.
just going to continue to change. That matter that's not created or destroyed, that just changes and changes form.
What is eternal doesn't change. The soul is the soul is the soul. The expression of the iteration of the soul changes. But that which is constant, the soul itself was, and already perfect. And it's just waiting for these human capacities to turn to it and acknowledge that. Our soul necessarily doesn't change. It's part of the Godhead, whatever that is. But this, yes, I'm in a meat suit, an earth suit right now. But who I really am is not this suit. It uses this suit as a means of expression on earth. If you go to space, you need a space suit. You come to earth, you need an earth suit.
Yep, that's true. Why is it that you think we don't remember our other lives here on this planet, given that you believe that we're reincarnated into new bodies over time?
Some people do.
Yeah.
Some people have the ability to go back and be regressed
And remember.
and have a recall. But how far back you want to go? And everybody's somebody famous. I was Cleopatra. I was Mark Antony. I wasn't the guy in the field planting the seed. I don't think we're able to encompass the truth of how many lives we've had and all the good and all the not so good things we may have done. So I'm not interested in going back and find out who I was. I'm interested in being all that I can be right here, right now.
Yeah, that's beautiful.
I don't want to live on my legacy. I want to live here now.
Yeah.
Be here now. That's what Ram Dass wrote. Be
here
now. Yeah, who we were and who we're going to be. It's okay. It's all good, but it's an intellectual exercise.
Yeah. Yeah, it is. Your second book, Second Chances, right?
I have it here.
Yeah. And I have it electronically on my phone. Yes. And you talk about just various stories of people who have second chances. And I think that when you get to the point, you can get to a point in your life where you have some kind of a major thing that triggers a second chance. But it doesn't have to be that kind of an experience, that we always have a chance to have a second chance and a third chance and a fourth chance and a fifth chance. So talk a little bit about what you mean by second chances and how we can all tap into it and intentionally have another chance to be someone different.
Every time you go to sleep at night and you wake up the next day, that's a second chance.
Yeah.
Sequentially. But usually the soul uses pivotal points in your path to really get your attention. For me, it was a heart attack. 5 years ago, I had a heart attack walking on the beach. I couldn't keep up with my wife, blah, 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 blah. And before you know it, I was rescued by the firemen who we drove back to our condo. I started not feeling well on the beach initially. And I said, Judy, you better take me back. I think my blood sugar's low, blah, 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 blah. So I got a second chance. These guys risked their own lives to save my life. They drove north on the south side of the highway against traffic because they didn't want me dying in the back of the bus. I got the right doctor at everything sequentially. I call it extra innings, a reprieve from sudden death. How synchronicity saved my life. That's my
Super synchronicities. You had that.
Yeah, again, it wasn't my time. This timing is key. And in real estate, it's okay. In life, it's timing. So we get these sometimes major events, but you're right. You don't have to have a catastrophic episode in your life to get a second chance. You got to give yourself permission to get back up, no matter how many times you get knocked down, to make a conscious decision. I'm not going to stay stuck. I'm going to move forward.
Yeah, that's beautiful.
Yeah, we've all been there, and it's chances. The book says not one, multiple times you get a second chance. Life is benevolent in that way. It gives you many opportunities.
Yep, you just have to take them.
Again, that's true. You have to make a conscious decision. I got this condition or I got that, but I'm not going to stay stuck. And everybody in the book, the 23 stories, are really most of these people had some pretty traumatic things happen that most people would have given up. They would have said, that's it, I'm done. They would have been in a victim consciousness. They would not have been in a victory consciousness. But everybody in this book made a decision at some pivotal moment and level to come back out of the storm with post-traumatic growth as opposed to post-traumatic stress. We've all been traumatized. I don't know anybody who hasn't had some kind of trauma in their life, if we're honest.
And you get the choice to pull something good out of those negative experiences.
That's the only power we have, the power of choice. That's really the only power we have. We don't always choose what washes up on our shoreline necessarily, but what are you going to do when it's there? That's the question. Some people that have more than their fair share of calamities and tragedies. And I don't have all the answers, by the way. I don't want to pretend that I know everything holds. This is what I am coming to rest with in my life, that they're all opportunities to give and receive love.
Yes, they are. Because it's the Blessings podcast, I always end by asking people what are their biggest lessons and blessings in life?
Oh, that's a good one. I told you this. I sign all my letters and all my email correspondence with blessings. That was another synchronicity when you told me what the name of your podcast, because that's how I sign it. Yeah. I've had many blessings in my life, particularly I met the love of my life, my wife. We only knew each other a month. We got engaged 8 months later. We got married, and we're married 56 years. And she's an angel. I couldn't do what I do or show up in the world without my wife, Judy. She's been my bedrock. She's solid. And I got beautiful children. They're my blessings. I got beautiful grandchildren. That's another blessing. So I've been blessed with a beautiful family, a supportive and loving family. But I have some great friends in my life along the way. And I've been blessed to meet some of these famous people. And you know what I come to understand? They're just like everybody else. Don't put them on a pedestal. We're all works in process. We're all works in progress and in process. And don't make any false gods here. Don't put anybody up, because then they're gonna come crashing down when you get close in. You get to notice some of the famous people. So we're all a mishmash.
We are a mishmash, aren't we? We're a beautiful, mushy mess. I love us.
It's true. And you know what I do in the morning? I wake up in the morning and I look in the mirror and I go, and it took me a long time to be able to do this. Good morning, Kenny. Do you know you're a magnificent being and I love you? And I hug myself. Now, that's not a narcissistic thing. When I say those words, it's my soul talking to this persona. Good morning, Kenny. You're a magnificent being and I love you. Who loves you? My soul loves me. It's been patient and putting up with me. With all my inequities and all my shadows. And that's another thing. We're all a light and shadow mixture. And when you learn to embrace and love the parts of yourself you've repressed and suppressed, you become a whole person. And everybody's got it.
Yeah. Wow. All right. There's so much to think about here. We could dig in for hours on each one of these concepts, but it's been amazing talking with you. And people should definitely get your books, Synchronicity and Second Chances. And we'll have all the information in the show notes for how you can get in touch with Dr. Ken and buy his books and be in his world. And I want to thank you so much for being here. And I can't wait to talk more with you. And Dr. Ken Harris is going to be speaking at the Rich Thinking Conference in October of 2025. If you're listening to this show before then, which you will be, it is going to be October 10th. 2025 in Philadelphia. You can get more information about that on my website. And I can't wait to hear Dr. Ken's talk on that day as well. It's going to be amazing. So thanks, Dr. Ken.
Thank you for having me. And by the way, for those of you who don't like to read, you can listen to my podcasts. I have many podcasts on my website. Just Google me, it'll pop up. And so you don't have to buy my books. But if you are readers, I encourage you to buy the books. They're easy reads, particularly the Synchronicity book. It's user friendly.
Yeah, and you can pick up the stories just one at a time. You don't even have it's almost the kind of book where you could go to any place in the book to read a story if you wanted to. If you wanted to have a synchronicity of which story you're supposed to read first. You could just
I tell people it makes a good poop book. You leave it in the bathroom, and between your poops, you can read a story that's 6-7 pages long. It's
true.
user friendly, and you don't have to remember who was in the last story. Like some of these novels, you got to remember who's what. No. That's one of the reasons the book has become very popular. It's user friendly and easy and entertaining, and it'll remind you of your own. That's why I wrote the book. So you have the experience that, you know what, something like that happened to me. I never thought of it that way.
And what I'm going to do as a result of reading your book is I'm going to start keeping a synchronicity journal. Because I have a dream journal, but I don't have one for my synchronicities. And I'm going to start a synchronicity journal where if something happens, I'll write it in a note on my phone. And then later I'll transfer it into a specific journal for synchronicities. I love that idea.
That's one of the 4 ways you can have more synchronicity. The first one, if you want to have a lot of synchronicities, talk to strangers. Ask questions.
Yep.
You got to engage people. You don't stay isolated. When you meet someone, ask them, where are you from? What are you doing here? What did you do before? Blah, 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 blah. And you invariably will find some connections.
Yes. I've had a lot of great meetings with people that way as well. And many of them on the beach, like you.
Well, people on the beach, we're not in competition on the beach. We're all there for the same reason.
Yeah. Everybody's happy on the beach. Great. All right, Dr. Ken, thank you again. It's been so great talking with you.
Thank you for having me. I appreciate you reaching out, and I hope someone listening to our conversation today walks away with some impact and change in their thought about how the world works.
Hey, everybody still listening. Will you go give a 5-star review to this podcast? Mitzi puts in so much effort and so much love into this. She's brilliant. She deserves it. So I am going to go right now. By the way, by the time you hear this and you go give your 5-star review, you should be able to go find my 5-star review of this podcast. But I just want to thank you for what you're doing.